I'm going to see if this makes noise when yep, I'm seeing the little wave do its thing, so check. That's my check. I hope you never get tired of the checks. The crow. I want to talk about this painting a little bit. I want to, as usual, take this seemingly silly painting and talk about the concept behind it, maybe a little bit. Talk about the crow itself. I don't know. I do a lot of shows and I see people's reactions when they look at my work, which is awesome. So yes, I see people's reactions to my work at shows, and there's a lot of smiles, a lot of laughs, a lot of people stop because it's usually like downtown, right? I'm thinking about the show that I do in Pritchard Park in Asheville. There's this show called the Ooh La La Curiosity Market. I do several times a year. I usually hang my big pieces, so if you're walking by the park, you can see my stuff from the sidewalk. Like this piece. At first people look at it, it's a crow standing on a package of French fries and pulling one of the French fries out, right? One thing I'd like to communicate is that once I finish a piece of art, I don't know, send it out to the world, release it to the public, etc., it is kind of in a lot of ways no longer mine. So in other words, my opinion of what this piece means, my theory of what this piece is not really any more relevant than yours is. And so the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I don't want to sway anybody's opinions, right? I want them to have their own thoughts about my art. But at the same time, the question I get asked the most is, you know, when people are raising their eyebrows, how do I think this stuff up? Or sometimes they will look at a particular piece and they'll say, what were you thinking when you did this? Which is a variation on where to get your ideas from. I've got to get better at talking about this art because there is a reason why I paint this stuff. There's an overarching reason why I do the things that I do when I paint. I have theories on what this art means, and it's possible that these theories are bullshit. I don't think they are, because there's an overarching, I think, theme to my stuff. The stuff that I choose to paint, right? It is sometimes just kind of random. It seems random, but in a way of like, there's thought that goes into these pieces. That's what I'm saying. And my theory on what they mean is usually really, really it's just a direction. Like, it's not a really focused, this is what it means and any other interpretation is wrong. It's not that. Because part of the utility of art is that you communicate something that isn't put into a few words. That's the cool utility of art. You know, kind of like old languages, you know, hieroglyphics and stuff like that. Like they conveyed possibly a whole story with one picture. That's one of the awesome things about illustration. If you can do it well, you know, you just like tell a whole story with one picture, which is what I like to do. Like, take for instance this one, okay? So the crow. The crow is resilient. The crow would survive, probably would outlast all of us. There are a lot of crows flying around here. And I guess you could say that this painting, I feel so like such a pretentious windbag saying this, but in some ways the bright saturated colors of the packaging and the idea that a bird's eating out of this fast food, what is fast food? It's like this instant gratification thing, right? Fast food, it's junk. Basically, we think of it as junk. It's just like saturated fat. In this case, saturated colors. It's just like these, you know, I mean, McDonald's fries, dude, I'm a sucker for them, but I don't think anybody would honestly try to make the case that they're good for you. They're the kind of thing that, you know, it's quite possible for you to decide 30 seconds beforehand that you're gonna eat 150,000 McDonald's fries, and then you do. And so this crow, right? Like, in some ways, if you wanted to look at the world in a way that I often see the world looked at, which is not without good reason, you know, people have had a profound impact on the world, on nature. We kick animals out of their environment all the time so we can build houses and stuff, right? Pave paradise and put up a parking lot. I try to do my best. Was that Joni Mitchell? I don't know. In some ways, you might be able to feel sorry for this crow and be like, oh, this poor crow has to eat McDonald's French fries because of our impact we have on nature, right? But the crow is not a victim. Also, the crow doesn't even think about instant gratification. Most animals, their whole lives are instant gratification. You know, this bird just knows there's food. The crow's going to be all right. You know, I know that we have an impact on nature, and I know that it's bad, and I know that we have to get better at it. I think that we are. I think that the best minds, the best minds in the world are probably working at Facebook trying to figure out how to steal your data. But the second best minds on the planet are trying to figure out how to level out our impact on the world. I think that it's safe to say that you can look in the ocean and see that there's an island of plastic and be like, wow, that's going to have to affect something. That affects something, right? So I'm hoping that we have some good minds, people that are smarter than me, trying to figure out how to keep that from happening. And I'm sorry to say it, I don't think we're going to like just get rid of gasoline, as they call it, and Furiosa, and it sucks. We need to do something about it. But I think a better approach would probably be to try to suck things out of the air before they get there, than pretend like we're gonna like just get rid of gasoline. I saw that movie last night, so it's fresh in my mind. But I mean, let's be honest. Fury Road is like a singularly awesome fucking movie from beginning to end. Furiosa is also a really awesome movie, but when you compare it to Fury Road, it's just unfair. Fury Road is like the best action movie ever made. Could it be? I think it might be. Anyway, digression after digression, but it is somehow related. This is a silly picture of a crow eating French fries, but in some ways it can be about our impact on the world, and then that can make us think about how trendy and how like obsessed we are with the post-apocalyptic universes. But this crow is not a victim of human intervention. Well, I think we all know that crows are like one of the smartest birds. And I never knew how true this was, because in 2024, most of us have to remain skeptical about everything. You know, first the Easter Bunny, then Santa, and then what's the latest one? Diddy, I guess. Anyways, I will say that I looked up the research behind the crow's intelligence. They're smart, and it's been proven over and over again. They can use tools. They have pretty complicated forms of communication. They remember people. They have like memories, a memory. I mean, sometimes my cat looks at me and I can tell that he doesn't recognize me for a second. So, right? I know they remember me, but sometimes when I get home, my one cat, he will look at me with real giant eyes for a second. Like, who's this? And then he finally realizes who it is. So that proves nothing. And it also probably has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. But here we are, right? I will start with a story. So the other day I was taking a walk. As you know, I've mentioned many times that I do walks. I'm that guy that walks around shirtless. I'm often just only wearing a little pair of tennis shorts. My body is leathery and glistening. No, I'm just kidding. Taking a walk the other day, and I was in this quiet little neighborhood. I think it was a Sunday morning, so it was, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on. It was a particularly quiet morning. And around a corner, walking up this street, this is a street with no sidewalks, you know? It's like there are cars parked on both sides, and it's very quiet. The sun has only been up for like an hour maybe, and I hear a crow crowing on a roof. And it was really hard for me to not think this crow is reacting to me. It's reacting to my presence, you know? Because I'm walking, he's standing on the roof like he's a guard, like he's standing on a watchtower, looking at me, and he calls. And you know, I mean, he's looking at me. He's looking at me out of the side of his head, like birds do a lot. But like, he calls, right? Like he's signaling to someone that, oh, hold up, somebody's coming. The police are here. You know what I mean? Like there's some kind of shady deal going on amongst crows somewhere back in those woods. And then when I was past the house, this is what really kind of sold it to me. When I was past the house, when I was within a certain distance, I heard that crow call again. And it didn't call while I was walking by. It called one time as I came up to the house, you know, as I passed the crow. And then it crowed a second time when I was what I would consider a safe distance away. So that led me down this path of looking up some facts about crows and really actually how smart are they? Is it possible for that to have been, from my experience, is it possible for that to have been what it looked like to me? That this crow was standing watch and that he or she was doing an all clear when I was safely out of the way? And the answer is yes. The answer is that crows have a pretty sophisticated behavior, and they do things like act as sentinels. Okay, so here we go. Crows, they're great at problem solving. They've done complex puzzles, like they've been set up in environments to do complex puzzles, usually to get food or something, and crazy stuff like, you know, like bending a wire into a hook to be able to hook a piece of food out of something that it can't reach, and then it will bend a wire into a hook and reach down in there and hook it. That's crazy, you know? I don't even know if I knew how to do that until I was like 23 years old. So another thing is that memory and facial recognition, they recognize people and they can remember them for years. So this isn't a very happy story, but I mean, it's also not the worst thing in the world, but these crows were offended by it. They were humans that were wearing specific masks that captured and banded crows, meaning they put probably a little transmitter around their leg so they could track them or something, which, you know, probably not super fun, probably freaks you out. If you're a crow, you're like, what's happening? You know, you're basically putting this crow under house arrest. It hasn't even gotten a court date. And so they get mad and they remember their masks. And so they reacted negatively to these masks years later. So they can remember stuff and they can remember you. Okay, so watch how you treat crows in your neighborhood. Communication, as I mentioned before, they are very sophisticated at communication. They can do stuff like, you know, they signal danger, food availability, like, hey, yo, I found a packet of French fries over here, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. Like there's a different noise for the police are here, and there's a different noise for I found a packet of French fries, you know? They can also do playful behavior, which a lot of animals do. Maybe I'll get to that in the future. I'll talk about that in the future. Actually, I heard once that mice, when they're little babies and they wrestle with each other, it's so high pitched that we can't hear it, but they make a little sound that can be like giggling. And also giggling and laughing may be a signal that, like, I'm just kidding, I'm just playing, kind of a thing. So in other words, if you're play fighting with somebody and you're giggling the whole time, it's like both of you are kind of saying there's not a real threat here, you know? So anyway, that's a little aside from my aside. They engage in playful activity. It says that they've been seen sliding on snow, playing catch, and aerial acrobatics. I've never witnessed any of those myself, but please feel free to go and look into that. There's probably several videos on YouTube with sledding crows. There's a famous experiment conducted by Dr. Alex Taylor and his team at the University of Auckland. And the experiment was a puzzle. It was like a multitask puzzle that the crow's name was Betty, had to complete in order to get to a piece of food. And so there were some steps. So there was a stick tied to a string, a short stick tied to a string. First, Betty had to pull a string to receive that little stick. Then she had to use that short stick to get a longer stick from a different tube. Then she had to use the longer stick to push the food out of the third tube. Pretty cool. All right, so then there's water displacement experiment. So we all know, or you know it, even if you don't think about it a lot, you know that if you displace water by putting something into it. In other words, you know, when you get in the bathtub is half full, and then when you put your ass in there, it is more than half full. It overflows and you have a big mess on your hands, etc., right? If you're not careful. So crows understand this concept, which is pretty interesting. I would think that it's a pretty advanced concept to understand. For us, it's nothing, because whatever, but for an animal to be smart enough to know, like, how they proved this was they put, more tubes. Crows are really smart when it comes to tubes, apparently. So there was a set of stones, and then there was a tube partially filled with water with a treat that was floating in it, and it was just out of reach, so the bird couldn't just reach in there and get it with his beak, or her beak. The last thing I want to do is be sexist when it comes to these crows. So the bird was smart enough to know not only that it needed to drop some stones into this tube in order to get that treat out of there, because, you know, as you drop stones into the tube, it would raise the water level, and that floating treat eventually can get it out of there. Not only did it know that, but it also knew that if you picked up bigger stones, you could do it faster, because, you know, they have more volume, and so therefore they displace more water. Now, that is pretty crazy. You know, that's not just a parlor trick, multi-step plan. Not everything can do that, you know? Think about cats. As much as I love them, they don't plan things out, right? They're terrible. They're terrible at planning, you know? I try to get my cats to decide which movie we're going to. They just wander off, you know? I mean, you can't say the crow is smarter than people necessarily, right? Like, I can do math better than the crow, possibly, on a good day. But at least I would give the crow a run for its money with basic arithmetic. But I don't know if calculus, different story. Crow probably kicked my ass. It could probably just randomly peck at the ground and come up with an answer faster than I could if you gave me a calculus problem to solve. Anyway, this crow's not a victim. It's kind of like Rorschach, right? In The Watchmen, when he's in jail. And this is my favorite part of the movie. And you know, like Rorschach, the actor who plays him, I forget, but he's a little guy, right? But his face, he looks so fucking mean, right? And the first part of the movie, Rorschach is running around with a mask on, right? Because it's a superhero movie, and so you don't really see his face. And then finally, he goes to jail for being a vigilante. And so now he's in prison with all these people he put in prison. And there's just this one part where everybody's fucking with him, and he's becoming surrounded by all these prisoners, right? And he says something like, and he says in this real raspy voice, he says like, "You keep saying that I'm locked in here with you, but you're locked in here with me," right? And then he whips everybody's ass. I kind of feel like similar to that with nature, right? It's true we have an effect on nature. I mean, it's without denial. I'm not trying to deny it at all. But I think it's also true. Boom, boom, please. You may have to put up with that. The cat scraping on stuff because he wants to play. See? I think that I own the cat, but the cat owns me. So the point is this: in some ways, we're trapped here with nature. Nature's not necessarily trapped here with us. Nature, biology, the idea that things matter is created and destroyed. The molecules throughout time. You know, time is a constant. We age. We eventually aren't here anymore, and life goes on. There will be a million crows. Don't quote me on that number, but there will be a million baby crows born the day that we leave the earth, any one of us, and they'll be all right, you know? So hopefully when you look at this painting, you will understand that, number one, you're allowed to have thoughts about it, and it's also about whatever you want it to be about, and it's also about the things I've talked about, right? But that's what I love. I love stories. I love thinking about stuff like this. I'm drawn to it. I'm drawn to contemplating things like this and trying to figure out how stuff fits together. I mean, that's the nature of creativity. So what do I mean to say? What I mean to say is that you can think that I'm like, you're allowed to think whatever you want about me and my art. You can think that this is just a goofy ass painting. You can think that all my paintings are goofy ass paintings, and that's totally fine. Like, you're not gonna hurt my feelings. Like I said, when I'm finished with a painting, I release it into the world, whatever that means. I hang it up. I guess I hang it up on outside at Pritchard Park, and then everybody can think what they think about it, and that's totally fine. There's no such thing as offending me by what you think about it. I've heard some very funny takes on the paintings when I just sit there and listen, and I talk to or I hear somebody trying to explain what it means because they know what it means, and they'll explain it to their date or whatever. It's pretty great. And if people ask, I usually just get kind of tongue-tied and stumble on my words. And, you know, a lot of the times my brain is in somewhere else. So I just say, well, yeah, it's just, you know, crows like French fries every day of the week, right? And that's true, but it's also true that I'm thinking about other stuff when I do this lowbrow stuff, right? There's thought that goes into these pieces. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, this has concluded my review of Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, in theaters now. Goodbye.